Well, the tools that are used, you need a swedge block, and swedge blocks were just made to fit the race plates, and typically they were bigger on the inside and smaller on the outside because of nail placement for years. The ones that I've started making them punch a little bit deeper because I feel that horses' walls have gotten better on the racetrack. You'll have a outside and inside, which your inside will be bigger, and you want that to your hammer side. So if you're right-handed, you're going to want it turned to the right side towards the end of the anvil. Because whenever you're swedging, you have a tendency to pull into your hand, and so it fills that block better. If you're left-handed, obviously you're going to turn it over and it's still going to face the heel of the anvil, but your anvil's going to be facing a different direction, so it'll be to your left side, so you'll pull that way. And then I'll use a swedging hammer. Swedging hammer, basically, it's between 3 and 6 pounds, according to how big a boy you are. I use a 4-pound swedging hammer, and it's softened because your block's hardened and you don't want to hit it with a hard hammer. And you don't want anything to break, so you're trying to take care of your blocks. So if you make a mislick, you don't break your block or break your hammer if one of them's soft. And it mushrooms out, and we will mushroom them out so that it forms to the way that you hit. And boy, if you wanted to see a fight when you was younger, you go in and take one of the older guys' swedging hammers and start swedging with it, because it would form. It would kind of get laid sideways, or it would form the way that you hit. So it would form to you, and if somebody would pick it up and start using it, whew, that was a bad deal. But today I used round stock. I will use round stock or flat stock. It's according to what I'm wanting to do with the swedge. If I'm wanting something to be real thin and real light on a horse that's going to run in that bar, I'll use 1/4 by half thin flat stock so that it drives all the way down in the bar. Today I used round stock. It was a little bit thicker because I got a little more depth, and the bar I made today was more for training. So I'd left a little more depth on the shoe, so it ended up being a little bit stronger. It really wouldn't bother me to run in that bar if the horse tells you that he can run in the bar. And but you also can take that block and just keep driving it in, and I feel that the round gives me a little more on the end. You saw how much I laid over, and then when I pulled it out, I kind of fined everything out and thinned it up. That way, I could drop it in there and it would stay, in with the horse's foot, in with the contours of the horse's foot. And then, I used a wooden mallet to turn it, and the reason that you use a wooden mallet to turn it is you don't want to beat up your swedge. Your swedge you want it to come to peaks at the top. You never want to hit that swedge on a hard surface, so you don't want to hit it with a hard hammer, or you don't want to hit it on the anvil itself, because you want to keep your tops sharp and where it cuts into the ground. Then from there, I just use a 2-pound hammer and a half-inch or 1/4-inch tongs to kind of turn everything. And I don't use my horn typically like you would use your horn when you're turning, bigger stock, 5/16 by 3/4, 3/8 by 3/4, 3/8 by 1, because you're going to smash your crease there. If you noticed, I turned around the horn instead of turning, using it as more of a cam. I kind of just used it to sweep around it, and I tried to keep my shoe some air between it. Between its horn and itself, where I was working to keep everything from smashing. It's just a little finer. You kind of have to be a little more tedious. When you're swedging steel, you have to ask it to bend. You start telling it to bend, you get kinks, and you end up it ends up making an ugly shoe. Whereas if you kind of ask it and you turn it around there, and you use a wooden mallet and you put a little air between it, it kind of just goes around there. You got to remember you're working with thin stuff, so you can't go to beating it up. This one was not punched for nails. I didn't put nail holes in it. We've got a punch press. It's just a hand punch, and it keeps from tearing those up. I normally have it in the truck. I didn't have it in the truck today. You can pritchel them, but you got to pritchel them dead cold because it's so thin that it warps everything. And with that hand punch, all the guys that were swedging shoes had one, and you just pop it through, and it puts a nail hole in there, and it's just got a top die and a bottom die, and it keeps from distorting everything. Years and years ago, through the 20s and 30s and 40s, the people that carried on the trade as we knew it, up into the 50s and 60s, the racetrack guys get a bad rap right now. But at one time, they were the ones that saved the trade. They were the true craftsmen. If you look at your standardbred guys and your thoroughbred guys from years ago, you know, they were the ones we actually owe a lot to. They saved the trade as it was, and they saved the craftsmanship part of it. But if you go to the racetrack, there's 2 or 3 guys at every racetrack that are doing really, really nice work, and they're kind of setting the standard. If you look at New Orleans from years ago, that's where Mr. Jack Reynolds went, and you can still see his influence today there, and there's still a good group of horseshoers there, you know, because they were around that and he taught those things. I was around Mr. Jack when I was 14, and I didn't know what I was around or who I was around, but I get to see his influences through my father and some other people, which I think is great.